Hey, deserving listeners, 90 Day Fiancé. My name is Dr. Kirk Honda. I'm a therapist and a professor. This is the Psychology in Seattle YouTube channel. As I always say, don't use YouTube as a replacement for therapy. If you need a therapist, get one. You deserve it. Let's watch.
What?
You want to save a man's life.
And I'm going to.
How do you have the power to save this man's life? Do you have a kidney you want to give him? Or is your presence going to save his life? I mean, answer me.
Did you really just say that bull?
Okay, she seems intoxicated, so I can't imagine this conversation going well. I can't imagine it going well if she were sober, but I imagine it's going to be worse if she's intoxicated.
You gonna leave me because I got a good heart?
I'm not saying, I know you have a good heart. I'm not disputing that. What I'm trying to point out is this. There's a way you will put down words. You said even though it's going to cost our marriage to break up, that you're still gonna go.
Right, he's doing well here. He's being very clear about what he's heard about. He's like, no, I'm not saying that it's not okay to have a big heart. I'm not saying it's not okay to take care of someone. I'm saying the thing you just said. You said that you would rather divorce me than not go to see him. And you're not going to save his life because unless you have a kidney, there's nothing you can do. You can help him, I guess. But so that really hurt, and that's why I'm upset.
What you just said, you going to see him is very important than our marriage. That means I'm nothing. Of course, I don't wish anything bad to happen to Billy. I want him to feel better. But in all our years together, Angela haven't considered how our actions affect me.
Yeah, very high emotional intelligence, differentiated, right? I think a lot of people on the show, in fact, maybe everyone we've ever seen on the show, would react much worse than Michael is right now. He's being very clear. He's saying, no, you can take care of him. I don't mind, but the way you treat me, it just makes me feel like I'm nothing.
She's only ever worried about herself.
Michael, look at me. Please look at me. I didn't mean it like, you don't mean nothing to me. I didn't mean, for crying out.
So this is another thing that we can analyze right now, which is that when people who tend to be abusive, when they get backed into a corner and you are being vulnerable with them and they don't see a way to be abusive to you that would make sense to them. It's never okay, and it never makes sense to be abusive, but it doesn't really fit into their model of what justifies abuse, because I don't think this is a scenario that she feels justified to do that. That they have to reckon with this situation where it's like, well, normally when there's an opposition, I become abusive, but he's being very vulnerable with me right now, and I don't feel like I'm going to lose him because he's expressing how much he cares about me, but I'm to blame. I did something bad, so what do I do here? It's a conundrum, right? Now, if you're healthy, you'd say like, hey, I'm sorry, you're right, or let me think about that, but I'm sorry that I made you feel that way. That's awful that I made you, okay. But to abusive people, because of what they were modeled growing up, and also because for them to admit that they did something wrong, it means that you're giving power to the victim. And the typical abuse profile is 1,000,000,000% averse to that, because to give power, they believe, will result in them losing all power. And their entire life is centered around constantly dominating and being in power. So you can't admit that you're wrong. You might not even believe that you are wrong because you've never considered that, because underneath the defensive structure of narcissism is just a vast sea of insecurity. And so you cannot ever admit, even to yourself, that you did anything wrong because of that threat. And so what do? Well, you might do something like this.
Together, Angela haven't considered how her actions affect me. She's only ever worried about herself.
Michael, look at me. Please look at me.
So I don't know about you, but I can kind of hear or see or imagine the gears turning in her head. She's just like, okay, what do I, but there's still a little bit of control in there, right? A lecturing style. That's a common mode that people like this will go into, where they'll just say, hey, look at me, hey. In fact, with Amaranth, that was very interesting. A lot of, who knows what was going on really in that video, but it looked like abuse, and the style that her husband would engage in, the various different styles, it did have a mode like this where Amaranth would be sad and crying, and he would be kind of backed into that corner where other people would admit that they're wrong or say I'm sorry or calm down or become softer or something. And for him, he would say, listen to me. There's this kind of, no, you got to listen to me. Stop having that feeling, or stop believing I did something wrong. But it's softer than normal because they don't feel like they need to engage in that over control and that dominance. So she's like, listen to me.
Her actions affects me. She's only ever worried about herself.
Michael, look at me. Please look at me. I didn't mean it like, you don't mean nothing to me. I didn't mean, for crying out loud, Michael, I'm freaking here after what you put me through.
And then the other mode that she has, which isn't universal, of course, to the profile of abusive individuals that I've treated, but it's common enough that when another mode that she'll go into is where she starts to feel sorry for herself, right? And she'll cry and she'll say, you've treated me so horribly, and I can't believe all the things you've done. And it could be genuine, it could not, it could be manipulative. I imagine it is, at least in that mode, genuine. I don't think it's fakery. It could be kind of a tactic. For children, they will do this sometimes. In fact, it's probably universal or almost universal that kids will do it at least very occasionally, if not very often, where they learn at a certain point, and you can usually tell that transition where the child will realize, oh, if I kind of amp up my tears or even manufacture them, I can get sympathy, I can get things from that. And you can, when you're in an abusive situation like Angela might have been when she was a child, I don't know, then you might need a lot of manipulative tactics to either avoid being abused further or getting a little bit more attunement and attention from people that are otherwise not usually giving you those things. And so it's genuine in the sense that hurt is there, but it's trumped up, if you will. It's emphasized, and it isn't genuine in the way that it would be with someone who just genuinely has, oh, I'm hurt, and then, oh, I'm crying. It's like it's already there, and they just kind of encourage it out, if that makes any sense. They accentuate it more, times 10, that sort of thing. So I think she's also borderlining on going into that mode as well.
I mean it like, you don't mean nothing to me. I didn't mean, for crying out loud, Michael, I'm freaking here after what you put me through. I don't want to lose you. I swear to God, I ain't come this far to lose you. I love you. I'm here with you. I introduced you to my crush. Now that's now my friend.
And then talking over him, getting up, more aggressive, dominant talk. And we're right back where we started, right? Because the line that she has to hold is, I'm never wrong. You're always wrong. I'm going to do whatever I want to, and I'm going to tell you what you're going to do. You have no power. I have all the power. And that's the only way that this is going to work. That's what's going to happen. So I think it was interesting. I think we saw a number of modes because she didn't know. Let's rewind it because it's kind of interesting. You can see the gears turning because on one hand, she's like, oh, he's telling me that he's hurt. And I think a part of me kind of agrees with him. I did just treat him like crap. What do I do with that? And you see those different modes come out. And then eventually it's stand up and talk down to him.
You don't mean nothing to me. I didn't mean, for crying out loud, Michael, I'm freaking here after what you put me through. I don't want to lose you. I swear to God, I ain't come this far to lose you. I love you. I'm here with you. I introduced you to my crush. Now that's now my friend. The man told you he don't have no feelings for me.
You know what I mean? Now, who knows? It could have been edited, probably was to some extent, but you see the different modes that were touched on in that moment. Now, I want to be clear that I don't think what we're seeing here is some manipulative, psychopathic tactic that someone is using. That she's like, okay, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And then I think we're seeing modes that are pretty much automatic to her, that they just emerge, because I don't think she has enough self-awareness or enough differentiation or maturity to be able to figure out what to do in a situation like that. I think she's just extremely just reactive and fused with situations, because I'm guessing that's what she experienced growing up, right? So I'm not saying that she's doing this on purpose. I think there are modes that she developed early in life that have become extremely automatic and routine to us. We're all like that. We all have these automatic modes that we go into in response to various different situations, particularly stress in relationships. And it takes a lot of work in therapy and personal work and getting feedback from others to become aware of these modes. The average person has like 0.5% awareness of the way they come across to people. If you are in a relationship with someone ongoing, particularly if you have conflict enough, you will see those modes in your partner or your friend or the person that you work with. You know those modes. You might not conceptualize it that way, but you'll be like, oh, there's that mode, there's that mode, there's that mode. Yeah, or there's that typical way they respond to that. There's that typical way they respond to that. You know them very well from the outside. But for the individual, for us, we are protected from that information because, one, we don't want to acknowledge that we have problems with our personality. It's very threatening to us. And two, we're not outside of us looking at ourselves. We are inside of our emotions and our feelings, and there's a lot to pay attention to when we're going into these kinds of situations. And it's basically impossible to be able to truly know how we're coming across to someone else unless we ask other people and trust them.
But at the same time, Billy's still my friend, and I want to help him with his kidney failure because he needs me. And it's important to me to go where someone needs me.
I want to get some rest, okay? Good night.
All right, well, that could have been worse, obviously, but it could have been a lot better.
So many restrictions on what I can do in this marriage.
Just wait a minute.
You put Billy over your marriage, so that's why I'm upset.
It's not more important than my marriage, Michael.
But you said that last night.
Michael, come sit down.
So we can use this as a jumping off point that for some relationships that I would be treating in my office, couples that I would be helping, they would have a history of modulating or managing conflict or communicating their hurt through threats of breaking up with each other. And I wonder if that's happening here, that a pattern is developing. I think it's possible that Michael might have learned from Angela because she's done this a number of times as well. And he has been trying a lot of different healthy ways of communicating his hurt and advocating for himself and drawing a boundary. It's not working. So now he is threatening to leave her because I don't think he's really wanting to break up with her. Maybe he is. I don't know. But I suspect that there's a part of him at the very least that is hoping that she will realize, oh, well, if he's willing to leave, then I have to compromise or I have to deal with it. So for yourself, you can think about that. What I would say is it's not like you shouldn't do that. It's not healthy to, well, it depends. But what I'll say is that if you're in a relationship where that is happening, where there are, at the very least, occasional, if not frequent, threats of divorce or subtle messages of like, well, if you don't listen to me or if you don't do this, I'm going to break up with you. or people break up, you know, like Ed and Liz, this kind of thing, it's an indication that something is going wrong, right? And what I would say what's going wrong here is that she is treating him poorly and has been, and specifically with this situation where she is saying, I'm going to go visit this guy and you can't do anything about it. And yes, I used to have a crush on him. I used to like him, and we were overtly flirting online, which could be considered infidelity, sure, but I don't care about your feelings, and that's just the way it's going to be. And so instead of her listening to him and hearing him, because she could have still gone to Canada to help Billy, but the way she was talking to him, particularly when they were on the Zoom call together, was very hurtful, and he keeps saying that. And he's very healthy to do that. He's like, look, I'm not talking about you going to see Billy. I'm talking about the way you treat me and the thing that you just said the other night. So he's doing everything he can to communicate that in a healthy way, in a non-aggressive, non-accusatory way, in a differentiated way, in a vulnerable way, in the way that I'm frequently recommending that people communicate. And she is just refusing to hear it. She gets exasperated with him, this sort of thing. So that's what I'm saying, is that when you have a pattern of breaking up as a way, you might not see it that way consciously, but if it ends up looking like that, where there are frequent threats of breaking up or even breakups and then you get back together, are you really breaking up? You know, because think about other situations where you absolutely were breaking up with someone. It's not ambiguous, right? You're breaking up and it's over. Even if there's a rekindling, you're just like, no, I don't want to be that. Or even if they try to get back together, you're like, no, it's over. So there, at the very least, is a subconscious desire to keep the relationship going, and that should be recognized. It doesn't mean that you don't break up. It just means that the reality of the break, because what people will frame breakups, like Ed and Liz, and I think for Angela and Michael, they'll say, well, we broke up because our relationship was over. I thought our relationship was over. Maybe consciously, but obviously it wasn't really over because you got back together pretty quickly, you know? It's complicated, but my point is that if you see that pattern in the past, it's worthy of exploration and therapy as to what exactly was going on for me holistically. Consciously, I wanted to break up, or consciously they were breaking up with me, but what was really going on? Was I really trying to communicate something and hoping that they would respond? You know, it's similar to when people will walk away, say, I'm out of here, and consciously you're like, I'm getting away from this person, but subconsciously or even consciously, you're hoping that the person will chase you. It's a passive bid for attention and for love and for indications of loyalty and care. And so we can think about that, and it's an indication that something very significant has to change in the relationship. And when you make those changes, then you don't have those urges. You don't need that mechanism of threats of breaking up in order to manage conflict.
Last night we were having such a good time, getting along. But I don't know how it got to this point.
God.
I mean, it's absurd.
Michael, do you even...
So, as I was saying before, she has different modes, and when he is being soft, and I also think when she at least partially understands or acknowledges that she's to blame, or that she's in the wrong, which I think might be happening right now, she has a different mode than, for example, when he has Instagram, there's a totally different mode that she goes into that we've seen, which is, at least the way it's portrayed on the show, very emotionally and verbally and sometimes physically abusive. But when she's in this mode, when she's in this situation, she has a different set of modes. She has like her exasperated mode, like Michael, like it's a lecturing, and again, using it as a jumping off point. If you're in an abusive relationship and you're in a mode like this, you're like, well, I'm not being abused, so I must be in a good relationship right now. Thank God I'm not being abused. But it's still not functional or empathetic or caring about when she exhibits these kinds of moves, because it's still top down. It's still like, Michael, listen to me. It's that kind of, instead of, I'm sorry, you're right. Or, I don't know what's happening. I don't feel like I did anything wrong, but tell me more. What's going, there's a lot of different ways other than, Michael, listen to me, that kind of attitude.
No, getting along. But I don't know how it got to this point.
God.
I mean, it's absurd.
Michael, do you even remember how the phone call started yesterday? Like, you telling me I can't go to Canada. Not saying, can we talk about this, just you're not going.
You see what I'm saying? It's this, you're the wrong one. I'm the smart one. You're the dumb one. And there's starting to be some hand movements, and there's a little bit of aggression getting into her voice here. It's important to be able to recognize that for a variety of reasons, because when this sort of thing happens, especially if you're in a relationship, an intimate relationship with someone, you need to be able to differentiate between, because there might be times when your relationship, and perhaps for them, we'll just assume that for them there are moments of functional, non-abusive communication, that you need to be able to see as a victim the sign. And of course, if you're a perpetrator, you would also do better by understanding the signs for yourself, because it can be subtle, right? For the two of them, it's possible, it wouldn't be unusual for the two of them to be like, well, we're not fighting like we usually do, so we must be really functional right now. But there's still that tone, there's still that talking down, that dominance, and that dismissiveness.
Phone call started yesterday. Like, you telling me I can't go to Canada. Not saying, can we talk about this, just you're not going. You know how I react in my mind about that kind of.
Yeah, that's another tactic that she's used before of, you know who I am. I'm an abusive, violent person. Like, that's just the way I am, and you're just going to have to deal with that, right? It's just another tactic that she uses to, I'm guessing it was modeled to her when she was growing up.
But you're the one that always said, after God, it's marriage, then every other things.
Yeah.
But now, the way I see it now is God, Billy, and every
Michael,
other thing else.
That is not how it is. I guess one thing led to another because you pissed me off, and then emotions started hitting me. You know how I am.
Yeah. So when she is backed into a corner and she's about to lose him and she doesn't want to, and she is like, okay, well, I can't be abusive to him right now because he will leave. And if you're ever in an abusive relationship, you will have moments like this or you might have moments like this where you're just like, I'm done. And you're really almost out the door. And the abusive individual will have a different mode because they know that they can't get away with it. When I say can't get away with it, it implies somehow that they have total control and have a plan as to how they approach the relationship. And sometimes they do, but most of the time they don't. It's very much in the moment reactivity that it drives their behavior. They're just following their nose. They're not really planning ahead. So I don't want to make it sound like they have a plan or that they've thought it through or they have any level of differentiation where they can look at the situation in themselves. It's just, they just know instinctually that if they engage in what they feel like doing, it will push them out the door. She doesn't want that. And so she does. Let's rewatch.
And every other things.
Yeah.
But now, the way I see it now is God, Billy, and every
Michael,
other thing else.
That is not how it is. I guess one thing led to another because you pissed me off, and then emotions started hitting me. You know how I am.
All right, so she says, you pissed me off, so it's your fault. We all understand that. And then my emotions got the best of me, which is her taking slight responsibility, still blaming it on him. And then, well, you know how I am. That's how I am. That's just how things are. Now, there's a possibility that if she were able to feel safe enough or something, that she could actually admit that she might have a problem. Sometimes when people say stuff like this, when they're calm and secure, there's enough self-awareness and humility to be able to admit that maybe they do overreact sometimes. But they And when they try to change it, because I'm guessing her issues go way back to childhood, so she's had a lot of time to realize that she overreacts sometimes. And when individuals like this try to change their behavior, because they don't want to lose people, they don't want to push people away from them, and they try to manage their emotions, they try to manage their behavior, they fail and fail and fail because they don't have good models to follow. They don't have therapy or therapy that works. And they have a lot of defensive structures that get in the way. They have a lot of traumas that trigger them, that push them beyond the ability to manage one's emotions and behavior. And so they eventually, after years of failing at trying to manage, they just say, well, how do I deal with this? Well, one solution is to say, well, this is just how I am. Because you'll see with addiction sometimes it'll be this way. Someone will be addicted to cigarettes and smoking cigarettes a lot, and then eventually they get to a point where they want to quit. And they try to quit, and it's very hard to quit cigarettes. And they might fail and fail and fail and fail and fail. And after years of that, eventually they just say, well, I can either continue to fail and hate myself, which is the only way that's going to work if I'm going to try to quit. I believe I can't do it. You can do it, by the way. There are methods. There are ways if you have proper treatment and a proper approach, according to research and in most situations. But there's a much easier approach, a much easier mindset, which is just like, well, I guess I'm a smoker, and that's just how it is. It's releasing. It's a bummer to the individual. They're losing something, the hope that they could not smoke, the getting rid of the ball and chain from their ankle. So it's not all fun and games to do that, but there is a liberation and a freedom and some semblance of self-esteem from that point. Because as you're failing, your self-esteem is being shredded. So for people like Angela, sometimes, I don't know if Angela is one of these people, but after many years of not knowing they had a problem, and then once they realize they have a problem, after many years of failing to try to change it, they eventually get to this point where they're just like, this is just the way I am, and I know I can't even acknowledge the fact that it's my fault or that I might be able to change, because I know what that thought means, which means that I have to now try to change, which I know I will fail at because I tried that before. So I just have to have this policy, this line that I just say every time, which is like, this is just how I am. And I don't know if that's what we're seeing. It's also possible that and there's some Venn diagram overlap of the abusive structure is based partially on that for some abusive people. Just like, well, I'm a passionate person, and when I don't like something, I don't like it. I tell the truth. These kinds of ways to spin what in actuality is overreactivity and abuse.
Well, I am stubborn, and if Michael telling me not to do something, that pisses me off even more and more wants me to do it. But Michael's never been the one to leave. I'm always the one leaving. And it kind of made me think,
Right. That is worrisome on a number of levels, that for the two of them, they could be entering into another phase where Michael's like, well, if you can't beat him, join him. So I can't be functional with her. I can't be healthy. I just have to threaten to leave her, I guess, from now on in order to get a little bit of respect.
Maybe this is something he finally can't take. And I can't take him leaving either. You're more important to me than any man, Michael. Yeah, I see it's really hurting your feelings.
It is. Frankly speaking, it is.
I mean, it's great that she can recognize that, but he was very explicit and had repeatedly told her in a very healthy, calm, non-accusatory way that it had hurt his feelings, but she did not hear it at all until he's packing his things and breaking up with her. So that's concerning. But maybe we could hope that this will push the relationship in a new direction and they will more easily get to this place without all of the abuse and the threats of breaking up with each other. I don't think that'll happen, but we can hope.
Well, then I won't go, Michael. If it really is hurting you like that, I won't go. 'Cause I don't want you to go home.
Now, the concern would be that once she gets him back into the relationship, that she will punish him in retribution for what's happening right here. We'll see that, right? That's the abusive cycle. I'm so sorry, I'll do anything for you, love bombing, that kind of stuff. And then once you're back in and the abusive person gets comfortable, that's when they start to enact their abuse again.
You know, I have in the past been stubborn about things that I have regretted. And this might be another one of those times that maybe I went too far. Come lay with me, Michael. You ain't hugging me all night. I know Michael's trying to show he's in control, but I also see that he's really hurt.
It's just an interesting way of looking at it. She says that, I know that he's trying to make sure that he's in control. What? Like, no. I mean, that's not the way it looked to me. It looked like he was saying, you hurt my feelings because you said that you wanted to divorce me because you wanted to randomly meet up with this random person you met on the internet, and you weren't even open to entertaining the possibility that you wouldn't do that for my sake. That really hurt. That's not control. That's him advocating for his needs. That's a very common, a lot of people would react that way who didn't have a controlling bone in their body, you know what I mean? They weren't prone to control. So it's just an interesting paradigm. And when you have those paradigms and those schemas, everything is filtered through that, right? Which points in the direction that she has a significant schema around powerlessness, meaning that she feels powerless, and her way of dealing with that, of coping with that, is to overcompensate by dominating.
I'm sorry, okay? I don't love nobody more than you. Ouch, Michael, that's my butt.
I can't remember any time that Angela ever compromised. And I'm not happy, my head got swollen.
Interesting. So it certainly looked that way, but we're not there behind the scenes. He just said that's the only time she's ever compromised with me. I mean, wow. And only because you were about to divorce her. Wow.
Peter invited us, you and I, to meet up with him and Hade. Just to meet up, have some drink together.
Michael tells me he hasn't spoke to the goofballs in months. So if Michael did tell the goofballs I'm here, then that means he's seeing the goofballs behind my back.
All right. As usual, I don't normally think things are going to happen so fast, or even that my predictions are going to come true. But once again, right away, it's happening. That the dominance and control is already here. And the isolation from his friends, from everyone, right? That's what abusive people do. They isolate you from everyone, particularly any friend who might be supportive about your needs, might help you to advocate for a little bit more power in the relationship. And so here we are. Let's see what happens.
Pisses me off because they're a bad influence. Like, they want Michael to go out and drink and go to parties. And I already know that it would be a big problem. You know, Michael, I told you I don't like him. And if I didn't have counseling the other day, I would have rapped on your ass right now.
Did she just say she has counseling? She's in, or are they talking about the counseling that they went to a couple episodes ago? That must be it, right? I don't know. But she says, if I didn't have counseling, okay, I don't know what that means, but she's saying, if I didn't have counseling, that's the only thing stopping me from being abusive, being violent, something.
The last damn thing I want to do is face the goofballs. But I'm leaving Nigeria in a few days, and we'll have to do long distance again while we wait on Michael's visa to be approved.
So another thing that abusive people will do is they will demean you and demean people around you. They will, and also narcissistic people will do this as well as a way of trying to establish dominance and superiority. They will nickname things. Think about politicians who do this, right? It's a very crude, childish, immature, ineffective way really to make yourself elevated, right? Because if you're the one giving someone else a nickname, particularly if it's a degrading nickname, then for a very brief moment in time, you feel elevated as a narcissistic, abusive person. And I don't know if that's what we're seeing, but it's an hypothesis.
We got to start a new chapter in our life, and I can't always have it my way. And I get that. So I think, we need to go see him. And because by this point, I don't give a what they say. They can't bother me. Well, I say that. Let's hope it goes that way. You know how I am.
All right. Well, if you want to, you can buy merch by clicking the link below. We have shirts and mugs and tumblers and posters and I think stickers. And we're looking into magnets, but we might not be able to get that. What else do we have? Other things. Lots of things. Hoodies, I believe. Various things that my wife has designed for y'all at your suggestion. I wear the shirts every day for them. 9 out of 10 days, because we will order samples, and because it seems a little narcissistic for me to wear my own merch, but I don't know. They're I like them. I like the colors. I like the statements sometimes. I get comments sometimes when I'm wearing the, take care of yourself shirt. Frequently I'll get comments. People will just be like, oh, that's a nice shirt. That's a really nice message on your shirt. And I'm always like, my wife designed it. And then my wife's like, well, he says it on his podcast. Anyway, also you can get a Cameo if you want by clicking the link below or going to Cameo. And you can get me to say happy birthday or happy anniversary or even propose to someone if that's in the cards for you. And everyone out there, please take care of yourself because you deserve it. You really, really do.